We've probably all heard somebody say, "Are you listening at all? Have you heard anything I've said? Hello, is anybody home?" I mean, it can almost be comical if it wasn't so serious. But communication is such an important part of any relationship that it is serious. And, so many people will destroy their lives by the way they communicate to themselves and to others. And a big part of communication, probably the biggest part, the most important part, is listening. And I've talked recently about listening to whom. Because we hear a lot about, of course, you got to listen. But listen to who? And the answer is we've got to listen to ourselves first. Of course, we've got to listen to the other party, but we've got to listen to ourselves first. It's very essential, and we don't do that in an egotistical way. It's not like a me first and only. No, it's exactly the opposite. Is we're listening to ourselves, and I mean that not just in our ears, not just in what we're thinking, but in every sense of the word, in our state of mind, how we're feeling, what our mood is. What our predispositions are at the moment, mentally. So part of it's in our mind. Listening is so important that we hear all the time. Well, we got 2 ears, 1 mouth, and all of that. It's cliche, right? But next time you're in front of a mirror, take a look at the size of your head. They're only this big. They can't hold a lot. But then if we consider how much is in there and all the different heads of the people that want to talk to us. There's a lot of information out there. And when we're in a communication one-on-one with somebody, they've got at least half of the information that's important to that communication. So it's important to listen to them. And we need to remember the goal of communication is always to feel better. That really is the ultimate goal. If we didn't talk, sometimes it would feel better, but long term it probably wouldn't. So we need to get these things said sometimes, good or bad. Whether we've done something really great or we've kind of had a crummy experience, we want to share it with another human being, and that's really what it's all about, is to make ourselves feel better. So we'll keep that in mind. And then, so we'll start with number 1, and that is to listen to ourselves. It's the most important. And it's important to keep that in mind because we all want to be heard, and we should be heard. And that's fair for us to want to be heard, but we tend to want to come into a communication, into a conversation with that so strongly in mind that sometimes it gets in the way of us being able to really hear and understand the other party. So we need to go into it with the intent, specifically listening with the intent to understand ourselves so that we can understand the other person. So we need to really slow down and listen to ourselves, listen to the other party. Like I tell myself, I need to listen with my ears, eyes, mind, and heart. But especially from our heart, because we need to understand what the other person's feeling. It's not really so much the words. Some people aren't really good at delivering the words. And if they are a little bit better at delivering the words, they're still trying to convey a feeling at some point. And that's the important part in dealing with other people. So we want to keep that in mind. And we come with these preconceived notions sometimes that gets in the way of us really being able to understand others and especially ourselves. I'll give you the example, for instance, of if your boss, or a professor or teacher, if you're in school, but let's just say boss. If your boss or person of authority says, "Hey, I'd like to speak to you. I need to talk to you one-on-one, just privately." Most of us would think, "Oh, shoot, something's up." But now let's say that conversation, in that conversation, your boss says, "You know what, I've been having a lot of trouble at home. I've got somebody that's really seriously sick, and I'm having trouble keeping up with my workload. So I've been thinking I'm going to need to promote somebody to help me. And I just wanted to check with you and see how your schedule is, to see if you would maybe be able to accommodate a promotion. And of course, that would include a pay raise." So that would take a whole new feeling, wouldn't it, compared to what you were thinking before when they said, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you." You consider too when, as far as our preconceived notions, sometimes when we ask somebody or somebody asks us a question, we might say, or they might say, "Why?" And so we kind of have a thought that there's something a little bit beyond, and sometimes there isn't. So anyway, we want to make sure that as much as possible, we're able to enter the conversation after having listened to ourselves, understood ourselves, our mood, our state of mind, our preconceived notions, to try to check them before entering into the conversation, and be able to really listen to the other person. Okay, so step 2 would be to listen with the intent to understand. And that means to use these, keep this zipped, and don't interrupt. Let them talk. And it's really good to let the other person talk almost to the point of exhaustion, especially if it's an emotional conversation. Very often when it's one that's hard for us to hear, it's better, and if you experiment with this, sometimes it's easier to let the other person finish, because if we interject, it tends to escalate if it's an emotional conversation. But even if it's a happy conversation, we want to let the other person be able to express completely what it is they're feeling and thinking. So once we've allowed them to completely get off their chest, or share with us what it is they want to share, then it might be good to mirror back to them, to repeat to them some of what they've said as much as we can remember, and kind of recap, to summarize, to make sure that we truly have understood them. So if we're not getting it, they can say, no, you missed this, or you don't understand this. And so we can make sure we truly do understand them. And then after we feel confident that we do understand them, we want to make sure that they feel that they've been understood, that they feel it. Not just that they, intellectualize and say, yeah, okay, I can hear, you remember what I said, but that you're feeling some of what they're feeling. That's when a person really feels understood. And then we want to empathize with them, whether it's a happy or sad or whatever kind of a conversation it is make sure the other person, exactly like I said, knows that we're feeling a little bit of what they're feeling. And it really makes that conversation, whether it's professional or personal. If a boss says, hey, I'm having trouble with this, or hey, I'm not happy about that, make sure that they understand that we know what's going on in here, but also what's going on with the rest of them with regard to that conversation. And so once we have cleared our mind and we think we understand them, we make them feel understood, we've empathized with them, this might be the time for number 3, and that is to decide on feedback. Are we going to comment or answer to what they've said, and or not? And that's the important part, is we need to really decide, are we going to or not? Because sometimes it's best to not say a word. Maybe somebody just needs to share what they're thinking. Maybe they've said something that's been hard for us to hear, that maybe something we flat out don't like, and it's better just to keep ourselves zipped until we're able to absorb it and maybe come with a more calm state of mind about it. Or maybe they're in a state of mind such that it's better not to say anything. So we need to make that decision in the moment and decide, do we want to give them feedback or not? It's really important, though, for sure, if it's an emotional conversation, to take your time and consider that and really weigh your words. Okay, because in the end, we want to remember that the goal of the conversation, of any communication, is to feel better. So make sure before you part company that they feel better and that you feel better. Okay, you want to compliment them. Even if they've shared something with you, if they've told you something that you don't like, something maybe is hurtful, maybe they've said it in a not so nice way, you can always compliment them, at least for being able to get it off their chest. Sometimes people bottle it up and there's no communication. It makes it really hard to get through to a person. And that in itself is another conversation, because that is a communication about the pain that they're feeling and the fact that they never learned to get it out and express it. And I guess I'm gesturing like this because they're very closed people. And that in itself says something about them in the situation. So compliment them, make sure they feel better. If they've had a happy situation, then express joy for them that they've been able to have that situation, and then make yourself feel better. If you've sat and listened to something that you don't like, or somebody else's good experience when maybe you didn't really feel like hearing that good experience, compliment yourself one way or another. Or if you've enjoyed the conversation, that you were able to really listen, that maybe you've done a better job than before in listening to the other party, making them feel heard and understood, compliment yourself. And give yourself some credit for what you've done. So, okay, so in summary, we've listened to ourselves. We've listened to the other party with the intent to understand, and we've given some feedback, maybe yes or no, and we've walked away feeling good from this. And that's really the end result, is we want to make sure that we've done that. So I hope this has done you some good. I'm sorry I kind of stumbled through my delivery a little bit. I'm new at this, and I thank you for bearing with me if you've reached this point. If you think that the information, maybe not the delivery wasn't so hot, but if the information was useful, maybe gave you some reminders, as most of us already know this stuff, but if it served you as any reminders, maybe you picked up something new. If you could, if you would subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. I'm trying to get this channel going. Maybe hit the notification button. That would be great too. So you know when I've put the other stuff up, maybe you listen and give me your feedback. I'd really appreciate your comments. Let me know how I could do better. I want to know where I've done a good job is okay, but I really want to know where I can improve, because that's the part that's going to make this channel successful and keep you coming back and keep you listening. And so thank you very much.